All right, good evening, everyone. I think I might have. Well, I'm getting a frame rate. I'm just not getting any action in the game. I think I'm going to reset it just to smooth things along. I do apologize for a later start. I know on Fridays it's always a bit of a roll of the dice as far as whether or not I'll be able to start at the time that I normally do. I think I'm gonna have to take the volume down a bit for. There we go. But yeah, tonight there. So for those of you not familiar with this series, there is a debate series in Canada. It's put on by, I think it's called the Peter Munk Foundation, or it's possibly the Peter Munk School of Global Affairs. I can't remember the company, but I believe Peter Munk made his fortune. It's definitely in mining. I think it was Barrick Gold. Anyways, one of the things he founded was basically a debate series, and it's, to be totally honest with you, it's had a mixed run. Neil Ferguson, I think, is I think he's probably been on there the most. He's done all right a couple of times, and then there are other ones where I think he chews the scenery a little bit too much and just generally doesn't. I don't really think he delivers. Sorry, I'm getting a weird thing on my frame rates. I'm just gonna have to tab out of the game for a second, see what's going on here. This might be. Well, that's a shame. This might be the demands being made on the computer. Okay, I will have to live with that. Probably one of the most famous ones that they did would be the one between Tony Blair and Christopher Hitchens. But the problem is that there have been some which are very clearly sort of pandering to a crowd, or they have been ones where the behavior of the debaters has not really been that great, and the debate has suffered as a result. And I'll be honest with you, so in one sense I like debate quite a bit, and in another sense I really dislike it. I think for those of you who recall a small scuffle with a fairly large streamer, they could not get over the demand, debate me bro. And I think one of the problems is generally debates kind of have emotion, and they have you have a clearly defined for and against. There's usually time limits. Whereas I think for most people, what debate means now is basically just, stand there and let me shout at you for a certain period of time. And unfortunately, I think a lot of sort of performed debates, or the debate series, tend to devolve into that. It's very rare that you see a really good, basically what they wind up being is sort of performances for, I don't know. I guess the biggest thing is that it's very clear that the two sides are not going to, you're never going to see somebody won over on the stage. That's clearly not going to happen. But I also think that there's a strong tendency in these things for people to sort of play to their side, which means that the points aren't really being made to bring the best case so much as it's get a bunch of Twitter-ready clips of that one time that so-and-so totally owns such and such, another BuzzFeed Upworthy / whatever clickbait you want title you can get, which is a shame, because obviously the one thing that we probably could stand for right now is a bit more intellectual curiosity and sort of the bridging of a gap between different sort of considered views. But I'm also not entirely sure the debate format is the best for that. So To my surprise, though, I really thought that I really did think that this one was be it resolved. I didn't like the statement of this motion, but there you have it. Be it resolved that what you call political correctness, I call progress. And I would say I had a fairly strong prior on this one. I really bristle. Bristle whenever the term political correctness comes up, and I mean, I don't think there's any bodies in chat right now. It's definitely a tough one for me, and I think one flaw that I would say of this debate is that political correctness was not very well defined, and I think that's a problem because the pro side for the motion, from the opening statements, I was actually very well. I don't know, I was very well disposed to them because, I'm sorry, I forget her name. She more or less started talking as like, she does not like censorship, does not like call-out culture, so on and so forth. And these are the hobby horses that you usually go against when you talk about political correctness. The opposing side are people who I'm better aware of. There's Jordan Peterson and Stephen Fry. So I've not seen his YouTube videos in that. I've seen some clips when he's on fairly hostile interview shows. I don't think he came off very well. I think he came off as very sulky, even petty at times. He was very quick to take offense. And I think he definitely tried to milk a particular line for all that it was worth. And the guy said, so the big problem here was that he was called I think it was like was it a mean white man or something like that. In the context of this day, it was actually I thought it was actually a fairly decent statement. But what really surprised me was Dyson, the speaker, did a really good job of sort of explaining. I thought he did a really good job of sort of creating some empathy for his particular side through it, and I don't think the audience really appreciated it. In fact, a lot of the audience really booed the second time he said that line, which I thought was a shame. But I mean, I went in with low expectations, and I definitely liked it a lot more than I thought it would. And I feel like, so as much as I like Stephen Fry, I can't really say that I like Jordan Peterson that much after it. Like, I don't like, in one sense, I sort of understand why people really like his stuff. But I don't see what the appeal is myself. Like, I see a very clear game that's being played in his case. I do like Stephen Fry quite a bit. I had one complaint I had about him was he was really ready to say, well, we haven't really been talking about political correctness, which is fair in one sense, but he didn't really do much to correct it either. But this is the nice thing, is that whether you agree or disagree with someone's point, it's, kind of the better version of a debate is, of course, when you walk away and can appreciate what was said. So it's one of the rare ones I can actually encourage you guys to check out. It should be free online. But I've done that's my excuse for why I started at 9-ish. And we will continue on. We are Sequence 1, Memory 2, the Estates General. So we're still pretty early on in this game, and I personally am really looking forward to making some progress, especially because it will open me up to a little bit more of the Assassin's Creed series once I get this off my plate. So I hope everybody's well tonight, and I'll try and give you a nice healthy dose of Unity, which I realize is not the most popular of the series. An urgent message has arrived for the absent, I think it's Monsieur de la Serre. Track him down and deliver it post haste.
Thrown out onto the street yet?
Oh, you would love that, wouldn't you?
It'd break my heart.
Olivier, if I weren't here, who'd do all your work for you?
The horses need brushing, boy. Get to it.
Certainement, monsieur.
Hello, Johnny Big Time. Thank you very much for the retweet. How are you doing tonight? I know this is not your favorite Assassin's Creed game, but I can't resist the French Revolution. It's such an interesting period of time.
Wait! Nom de Dieu, nom de Dieu.
Some trouble, mon ami?
A letter for Sire de la Serre. It's very important.
Oh, calm yourself, Perrault. That letter won't reach Monsieur de la Serre any faster if you drop dead of exhaustion. Give it here. I'll catch
You
you.
must receive it today. It's very...
Very important. Yes, I heard you the first time. I'll see that he gets it.
Monsieur de la Serre! Stop!
Bad luck, lads. You'll have to go round.
Make way, make way!
All over.
What was that?
Doing good. Just saw Deadpool 2, funny movie. Did you see the first one? I haven't seen it. But it was shot in Vancouver, where I used to live. Oops. Should probably not hold down the spacebar if I actually want to make progress here.
Apparently, walnut is a popular finish this season. Who is driving this coach? Pelops?
Oh, damn it. I wanted to run on the... what you call it? The rope.
Arrêtez! Monsieur de la Serre! His excuse, on carriage. What I need is a bird's eye view.
So one of the things that I think has made me... Oh. Les Miserables. Sean here. Look, I just want to get this out of the way because as soon as anyone mentions the French Revolution, someone else's eyes light up and they start hearing, "Do you hear the people sing?" in that weird way people do when they're both talking and singing at the same time. And I have to listen to that god-awful rendition of the song, that god-awful musical, and I seriously start to consider trapping my fingers in a door just so I have something else to think about. The French Revolution, the one you're in, started in 1789. Have you got that? Les Miserables, a novel by Victor Hugo, later turned into a musical by someone who very clearly hates me personally and dead set on making my life a living, breathing hell, is set in Paris in a time period between 1815 and 1832, which was an entirely different revolution. Stop looking for Jean Valjean, all right? He is not here. Anyway, I prefer cats. It's more believable. Nice. I have a little difficulty. Liking Arno at the moment. But I have also been away from the game for a while, so hopefully I will learn to like him. Hello, we haven't met, but you can call me Sean. I just thought I'd say it seems Abstergo has put together a rather lovely historical database that you can peruse as you're running around. Unfortunately for you, their historian gave things a bit of a, well, let's just say they have a particular viewpoint that they're keen to get across. By which I mean they're Templars and they think like Templars, and they lie to people who aren't Templars. So I'm just going to go through and add in some explanatory footnotes so I give you a bit more balanced perspective. Well, I'll try for balance. I'll aim for it. Balance is certainly something worth striving for, or at least thinking about. Or maybe I'll just mention it here and there and you can be your own judge. Also, it would, and far be it for me to criticize, because they've given it quite some effort, but the way that they write history is as dry as freeze-dried, dry-clean, dry thing with a particularly chronic case of dry mouth, which has been left out in the sun and then popped into an oven. So let me at least attempt to make it a smidgen more readable, although that's the last time you'll ever see me use the word smidgen. Oop, I'm trying to... Give me the database! I could have sworn it said tab to access the database. Anyways, let's catch up on some of our encyclopedia. Well, we've taken care of these ones. Or I thought we did. Okay, locations, so districts, the village de Versailles. When Louis XIII built his first hunting lodge in the village of Versailles in 1623, it was surrounded by vast forests where the king could indulge in his favorite sport. In it, his son Louis XIV, who decided to make it the central point of it was his son Louis XIV who decided to make it the central point in France. In the 1660s, he decided to construct a chateau commensurate with his ambition to control the French state. In actual fact, he left Paris behind for fear of the revolts that he had known as a child during the Fronde. In short, he no longer wanted to be subject to the fervor of Parisian crowds. Between 1665 and 1680, some 25,000 men and 6,000 horses busied themselves daily. One team worked days, the other nights, by torchlight. The church apparently tolerated work on Sundays. The French king wanted the magnificence of the palace to reveal his unequaled power to the rest of Europe, as capable of forcing nature as he was imposing his law on the world. Versailles was a showcase. Nothing short of perfection would be tolerated. I find it hard enough to install decking, mind you. I didn't have 6,000 horses to help me. Not that they're much good with hammers. The village of Versailles would also quickly develop, if only to accommodate the courtiers. In 1682, they numbered 6,000. By 1690, their number had reached 10,000. To ensure their continued presence in Versailles, Louis XIV determined that all buildings erected in Versailles be non-liable to seizure for debt, which made the village particularly attractive. Louis XV and Louis XVI would both make a great many changes to the chateau, while transforming the village into a hub from which the royal administration exerted its power. It was in Salle du Menu Plaisir, literally the room of lesser pleasures, essentially a storeroom for royal decorations and disguises, that the Estates General was held in May 1789. And here's the Hôtel de Menu Plaisir. Sorry, I'm not very good at my French pronunciation, but I'm actually mildly curious, Johnny, if you're still here, if you know that much about the French Revolution. Built at the command of Louis XV to house the organization responsible for preparing royal ceremonies and festivals, the Hôtel de Menu Plaisir in Versailles is the most famous as the site of the Estates General in 1789. During the Revolution, it served variously as a courthouse, barracks, and bread distribution center. Much of the historic building was destroyed in 1800 when the property was sold to a private citizen. Today, the site is home to the Centre de Baroque Musique de Versailles. And palaces. Palais de Versailles. Originally a hunting lodge built for Louis XIII, the Palace of Versailles was expanded into one of the largest palaces in the world and the seat of the French monarchy under the reign of his successor, Louis XIV. The royal family abandoned the palace for Tuileries in Paris at the outset of the French Revolution. After the king's arrest, Versailles, along with all the royal possessions, was confiscated and sealed. The furnishings were sold at auction in 1793, and in 1794 it was turned into a museum. Odd, they got rid of everything in it and then turned it into a museum. What were the people supposed to look at? Small signs saying a fancy chair used to be here? Despite the various restorations, empires, and revolutions that followed, Versailles would never again be the center of political power. And that's that. Oh, miscellaneous. Events. The persecution of the Templars under Philip the Fair. When Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair, came to the throne in October 1285, he was determined to reorganize the kingdom's finances. Incidentally, it occurred to me that this is the first time that we've seen the Middle Ages since the first game, I think. Well, actually, I guess that's not true because Revelations had a bunch of Altair sequences. They felt a lot like the Italy sequences. All that you know you learned in the game, and you have seen the first one. It was good as well. Okay, that's good. I should check if you recommend them. Then I think they're worth seeing. One of the original. It's actually probably worth repeating this, although I know the attendance is a little bit low right now. Usually, whenever I start late, I notice I tend to feel it in the view counts, but that's fine. As long as you guys are here, I'm happy. One of the original reasons why we did this, I was playing Revelations. And I knew I was getting close to the end, and July the 4th was coming up. So I thought, well, it's obviously very appropriate for me to do Assassin's Creed 3 in honor of the American Revolution. But the important thing is that July the 14th is Bastille Day, which celebrates the French Revolution. So if I'm going to celebrate the American Revolution, then I should also celebrate a very similar revolution in the form of, in the form of Assassin's Creed Unity. The dilemma, of course, is that that meant I had to finish Assassin's Creed 3 in 10 days, and anybody who watches the stream regularly knows that I don't get through games quickly, so that was definitely a fun challenge. One of the things I wanted to talk about as part of it, and we did this a lot during Assassin's Creed 3, was how the 7 Years' War, which ultimately led to sort of the English ownership of the French colonies in North America, Canada, ultimately it is the 7 Years' War. It's created sort of fiscal crises, and the fiscal crises preceded the revolutions. They created sort of these actual crises, physical ones. And in the form of the United States, Assassin's Creed 3, the American Revolution, there's two factors behind it. First of all, taxation is required to pay for the war, the 7 Years' War, which you can kind of see as this big climax in this centuries-long epic battle between England and France. And as you know, the American colonies weren't too crazy about those taxes. But it's also the removal of the threat of French power in the north that allowed the colonies to, I think, both realize and be able to assert its independence from England. And so this is the very interesting thing, is that the 7 Years' War, in one sense, was a success for the English, and in another sense was the Avia. Great to see you. Yeah, it's been a while since I've played Assassin's Creed, because I had a lot of technical problems streaming this, and I've got a couple of games that in the series that I'd really like to show on cast, because I've got some fun ideas for them. Now, the French Revolution is sort of a similar story. There's a really neat thing you can do about the history of France, which is we've been talking about Versailles and Louis XIV. And you can know everything. No, it's not a problem at all, Avia. It's great to see you. I'm going to be talking about a bit of French history, and I'm probably going to embarrass myself doing this. So I trust you to keep me honest. But many people will associate Louis XIV with his grandeur, his large wigs, his fine dress, the levee in the morning, canes, and he centralized the state. The very famous saying, "L'État c'est moi," I am the state. Versailles was a means through which he could do that. Basically, all the nobility is in one place, and they are busy conspiring against each other while he is projecting power into Europe. And what was so interesting, and you can actually see this in the letters that he writes, is he was extremely sharp, and even as a young boy, wanted to manage the state, and by account seemed to do a pretty good job of it. Everybody sort of expected him to grow bored of it, and he never stopped. And so while many nobles, both inside and outside of France, wanted to imitate the king and his finery, it was very much a tool of control, and he didn't do it because he liked finery. I'm sure he did that for that reason as well. But there was a seriousness behind what he was doing, which probably was not appreciated by his contemporaries, and I think, depending on the depiction that you see, is not always appreciated by modern depictions as well. But what's so interesting is you can actually sort of measure the decline through the wigs, because Louis, if you look at paintings of Louis XIV, he's got this massive mane on him. And as time goes by and lesser kings take his place, no one knows it as noble. Sorry, I'm not sure the correct terms. But what you see over time is the wigs get smaller, and all of a sudden it ceases to have the seriousness and the weight, and instead they become these little things that you see, usually if you're seeing like a film about Marie Antoinette or something like that. They're usually these little small things that you put on, And there's this really interesting image that you get from that, which is you have this upper class, this, royalty or nobility or whatever the proper term is, who want all of the finery of Versailles and Louis XIV, but they are not willing to do what's required to maintain and to earn it. And so following the defeat in the 7 Years' War, there are large debts. And again, taxation is required to pay them. Unlike the English, which lost the 13 colonies, which eventually became the United States, the revolution happened in France. And again, we've already seen this. I'm pretty sure we've seen the storming of the Bastille in this game. But it's so interesting that in one way you can see a very similar origin, which is the financial crises brought on by the 7 Years' War. And you can also see revolutions that are, in some senses, similar to each other. I know figures like, I believe, Tom Paine and Thomas Jefferson came to revolutionary France, although I think the end of the French Revolution was one of, that ended in the Reign of Terror, rather than the American Revolution, which I think many people consider ended in better terms, although not a complete one until much later. Anyways, reorganize the kingdom's finances. The crown of France was in substantial debt to the Order of the Knights Templar, which had become an order of rich bankers. In order to seize its fortunes and destroy its political importance, Philip the Fair decreed the order dissolved. He promptly arrested all Templars in France and urged other European sovereigns to follow suit. Arrested in Paris, 138 Templars faced accusations of Guillaume Imbert de Paris, head of the Inquisition in France. Among other blasphemies, the Templars were accused of worshipping an odd idol, Baphomet. Legend has it, at his execution, Jacques de Molay placed a deadly curse on his accusers. Pope Clement, Chevalier Guillaume de Nogaire, King Philip, I summon you to the tribunal of heaven before this year of out. Curse you, curse you, curse you, curse you all until the 13th generation of your progeny. Oop. I am totally using that next time I'm thrown out of the local pub. Curse you, all the 13 generations of your progeny. All right, what else do we have? Oh, that was the wrong one. Items. Cockade. A circle of ribbons usually worn on a hat. The cockade of the Revolution is represented the colors that we see today in the French flag. Blue, white, and red, sometimes known as the tricolore. The idea of the three-color flag was presented to Louis XVI by Lafayette during their meeting at the Hôtel de Ville on July 17th, 1789. To the blue and red colors of the cockade of Paris, Lafayette added the white cockade of the monarchy, conferring upon the sovereign a central role in the new definition of powers. Note that the king didn't last, but this symbol did. Alright, I believe we are caught up on the Animus, which means that you guys get to see more gameplay. Let's go to the church spire. So one of the things, so Johnny makes a good point here, which is, of course, that it's entirely possible to say all I know about the French Revolution I picked up from Assassin's Creed. And it's very easy for snooty academic types like me to sort of sit down. It does a very. I'm glad to hear that, Avia, because I was actually just going to cover that here. There's a sense where, I can be, a snooty academic about this and sort of say, oh, isn't it terrible that the children are only learning about history through video games? And yet this is very much like Battlefield 1, in which I think it's a great way to show people how interesting history and these things are. And to be able to, obviously to seriously study history, there is a point where you need to read a book and you need to go to some heavier sources, but it's really something else to, one thing that I particularly love about this game. To be able to you know, this first one being this being the first one where they sort of had that newer engine where they can render all the crowds. And I realized there were technical problems with this game when it originally came out. Like, just to, you know, the game, which is about this big and important event, this revolution. I don't know, like, I think to just gain that initial point of interest, it's hard. I think it's hard to I think it's hard to overstate the value of kind of the interest a game like this can promote. Oops. My bad.
Back of the line.
So I can't just run through like a moron.
You want to meet my bayonet?
Nice. Uh-oh. This is a nice little, this is a nice way of teaching, teaching how to use crowds. Hello, Ego, how are you doing?
Move! Damn your eyes! Move!
Oh, excellent. Thank you. I wasn't sure what year this took place in, so 1789 is helpful. Also, Avi, I'm not sure. I might be getting your messages a little bit later than I thought. So sorry if I cover material that or I say if it feels like I'm saying things after you write them, I might have a delay on my chat. I'm actually trying to double check that because I also know a couple of responses I got from. Actually, okay, I'm gonna do a quick test. Could whoever's in chat, yeah, not a problem. It's Ego. I actually just got started. I was watching the Monk debate tonight. Could I just get a quick word? Whoever hears this, when you hear me say potato, please write that in chat. I just like a quick idea in terms of what the delay is like. Hey, Alpha 360. Ah, thank you so much, Isaacson. Okay, the delay's not as bad as I thought, but it's a little bit longer than I thought. All right, I've got myself into a bit of a pickle, so I don't think I'm going to be able to run. So I should be able to. Uh-oh.
What was that?
I almost screwed it. How you doing, Isaacson? There's a bunch of good people here, so I know when I get a late start, I'm not used to having so many people come in sort of near the start. I know Assassin's Creed is always, especially Unity, is always a bit of a, it's a little bit of a dodgy prospect in terms of viewing numbers, but I've always been told that my better streams are the ones where I'm enjoying it, and I will admit I do enjoy. I really do enjoy things like the Animus. I'm just gonna wait for this guy to go on a patrol again. No, that's totally appropriate too, Johnny Big Time. You're playing Mario Kart. That's not a Nintendo appropriate phrase. Oh wow, that's not obvious at all. I guess it's on the Switch you're playing that? The Estates General of 1789. Navia was good to inform me here. The Estates General was a general assembly representing the three classes or estates of French society: the clergy, the first estate; the nobility, the second estate; and the peasantry, the third estate. The Estates General was not a legislative body like the English Parliament. Rather, its role was to advise the king, with whom all authority lay. I've often imagined what it might like to be a king. I think my first rule would be to make all crime illegal. Boom! Just like that. You're welcome. It was infrequently called, before the onset of the Revolution, the last meeting of the estate. It was infrequently called. Before the onset of the Revolution, the last meeting of the Estates General was 1614. The Estates General sat for several weeks in May and June 1789 to address the financial crisis facing the realm, thanks in no small part to the French government's role in financing the American Revolution. The meeting quickly came to an impasse over the first item on the agenda. However, whether the Estates General should vote collectively by estate, which would give an advantage to the first and second estates, or vote individually, which would give the more numerous third estate the advantage. Deadlocked, the deputies of the third estate began to discuss political reforms rather than the financial crisis that had been the original agenda. The meeting of the Estates General dissolved when the Third Estate declared itself the National Assembly and announced that it would conduct the nation's affairs. The First and Second Estates were invited to join the Assembly, but it was clear which way the political wind was blowing. The French Revolution was beginning. Ego came back from smoking a joint and drinking a beer with a good friend at your old fireplace where you hung in high school times, talking to the group that things... Oh, that's really nice to hear. And Isaacson, nor is I will batter and fry your rubbery ass, you prepubescent mollusk while playing Splatoon, but it happens. I need to see you play Splatoon on cast sometime, Sin. I was debating on getting a Switch. If somebody would like to sell me on a Switch, I will hopefully get a tax return at some point. Oop, the Third Estate. The First Estate was the church, the Second Estate was the nobility, the Third Estate was everyone else. It comprised of beggars, peasants, the bourgeoisie, notaries, doctors, lawyers, artisans, bankers, even scholars, who at the time represented approximately 96% of the population. I don't think that means 96% of the population were scholars. If it did, that would be one terrifically nerdy time period. I dare say you and I would have fit in rather well. In a pamphlet entitled What is the Third Estate, published in 1789, CA wrote, "What is the Third Estate? Everything. What has it been until now is in the political order? Nothing. What does it ask? To become something. Nothing be done without it. Everything would be infinitely better without the other two orders." Johnny Big Time just straight up says, buy a Switch. Pure and simple like a hammer to the forebrain. Hey, that other guy said du nuit as well. So the Estates General speaks French, but Arno speaks English. Can I just like run in and assassinate the dude? Get a Switch, play things with you and Johnny. I'll get to hang out with the two coolest people that I know. Well, two of the coolest. No, I think you guys are right. I might have to throw like Jess in there. There's probably a couple of others that, if they were to make a big deal out of it, I would have to include them as well. But you and Johnny are pretty cool cats. Alright, clearly I have made a mistake. Don't have the money? Oh, for the Switch, yeah. Well, it's all entirely conditioned. So I gave myself a small, like, you can go a little crazy with this money budget. Not a lot. But like I set aside a little bit, and I think it would be enough. I'm debating between a tablet, because the one I have is a bit old. It's like not supported by the manufacturer anymore. And the alternative would be... Okay, so I sort of know that there's more people upstairs that I could potentially look at. I just wasn't quite clear on how I get in there, so let's try another approach. Well, so much for that. So it seems like there's only one way. But yeah, so, and then the other thing is that I also realize that I don't always need to spend money when I get it. Oh. Okay, I'm pretty sure if I jump... Yeah, it's not going to let me jump over the edge like that. It's going to make me sneak to the back. Okay. I can work with that. It's great for you the first time you hear voices in French in a game, no English or Japanese. Yeah, you know, it's one thing that I need to... Like, so I obviously benefit from the fact that all games are in English. Although one of the funny things is that I personally prefer... I actually personally prefer games that allow me to do a little of the voice acting myself. Okay, so this is clearly going to get me... Oh.
Finally. Not these two again. Must have tailed me from the estate.
Estates General Députés. In March 1789, elections were held to select the 578 deputies from the 3 estates. The list of deputies included men such as Robespierre, Monnier, Barnave, Sieyes, and the Comte de Mirabeau, who, although a noble, chose to sit as a deputy of the Third Estate. Most of the men who comprised the Third Estate were in their late 20s or early 30s. The plain black clothes worn by the deputies of the Third Estate contrasted sharply with the luxurious, brightly colored garments of the nobles and the clergy. Also, they were very slimming. That money invested in your Magic the Gathering. Oh, cool. Actually, I've gotten back into Netrunner a little bit, but the problem is I don't have a lot of people to play physical games with in Ottawa. So sometimes I get them just because they look nice.
So, who or what will take its place? Another king? A council of capable men?
That is the question, isn't it?
A truce, then.
What the devil was that about? Now, we can resolve this without recourse to violence, can't we?
Get him, Hugo!
I suppose not.
Henri Gabriel Riquetti, Comte de Mirabeau. Born in Le Bignon, Mirabeau suffered a virulent case of smallpox at a young age, which left his face scarred with pockmarks. Jesse Quill, thank you very much for the host. How are you doing? Scarred with pockmarks. His family was quite wealthy, and his father obtained for him a commission in the cavalry, but the army was a poor fit for him. Young Mirabeau became embroiled in an affair with his colonel's wife. When the affair came to light, Mirabeau's father had him imprisoned on the Ile de Ré. He spent many years in and out of prison, always one step ahead of creditors, and more often than not, angry husbands. Later, while imprisoned at Fort de Joux, he seduced his jailer's wife and escaped with her. He settled in Amsterdam, where he became involved in various occult societies. Later arrested by the police, he was again imprisoned for 3 years in the castle of Issiem, where he wrote dozens of texts in which he condemned the arbitrary nature of French justice, as well as an essentially pornographic text, Erotica Biblion. At this point, I should say, this bed-hopping, war-dodging, erotica-writing, anti-establishment gigolo sounds like the most French man ever. I mean, he took Frenchmanhood to whole new heights. And when I say French manhood, I'm talking about the level of his Frenchness, not of his French manhood. Actually, I'm talking about that as well. Once released from prison, his life changed when, in Neuchâtel, he met the Genevese revolutionaries in exile, including the financier Etienne Cavalier, who would play an important role in Paris. The talented men formed the foundations of Mirabeau's group and political reasoning. They wrote, he signed. This explains his prolific production. Politicians have always used ghostwriters. He attacked the banks in his texts in return for payment by another banker, thus allowing him to pay off his mountain of debt. He also attacked French ministers Charles d'Alexandrie de Calonne, which led to yet another lettre de cachet in subsequent exile in Prussia, where he acquired the certainty that the middle classes shall only be freed by joining forces with the lower classes. In any case, the nobility wanted nothing to do with the strange marquis. At the outset of the revolution, he was elected to represent the Third Estate at the Estates Generales. For all that, the inspiration for his political workshop lay with his friends. Mirabeau, an exceptional orator, was merely their spokesman. The remainder of his story is better known. His services were paid for by the king as early as October 1789, even though the court never heeded his advice. Proof of his secret dealings with the king came with the discovery of the famous iron chest at the Tuileries Palace, containing, among other things, correspondence and a list of payments. However, by this time, he had already been in the grave for 16 months. Prior to his death, when his health, damaged by his excesses, had all but failed him, his last speech was delivered by Talleyrand, but in actual fact had been written by Genovese pastor Etienne Solognon Ribas. I'm glad to hear the headache is gone, Jesse Quill. I talked a little bit about the debate at the start, and we are not too far into Unity tonight, so... Neuchâtel is the French part of Switzerland. I did not know that. And I should probably do some shout-outs in a little bit as well, because we've got some lovely people in here, but I'll try and get the numbers to swell a little bit before we go too far. Louis was never meant to become king, but his father died in 1765, followed by his two older brothers. When his grandfather, Louis XV, died in 1774, he came to a throne for which he was ill-prepared. Louis and his wife would fail to provide France with an heir for 7 years, to the derision of the French people. Even the celebrations of their wedding day would end in tragedy, with the death of 100 Parisians following a stampede at a fireworks display. An indecisive man, in the words of one deputy, the king spent his whole life saying each evening that he was mistaking that same morning. As his younger brother, the future Charles X, would say, not without irony, trying to get Louis to hold a position was like trying to hold grease billiard balls together. Amazingly, that phrase never caught on, really. But then trying to get a phrase to catch on is like oiling a hammer and expecting a cat to marry it. You can use that one if you like. His 19-year reign would become increasingly agitated since the court was incapable of reform. Louis XV had merely covered up the nation's problems without actually resolving anything. His heir wished to be called Louis de Sèvres, in contrast with the permissiveness and debauchery of his grandfather. But as far as the public was concerned, he would be Louis the Weak. Never mind Louis the Weak. There were so many men called Louis that you could have had a Louis of the Week. What decisions he actually managed to make turned against him. The war with England to support Franklin and Washington would ruin the kingdom, and by 1789, debt-ridden France had reached a state of virtual bankruptcy. The situation was exacerbated by the trade treaty with London. The British, who were way ahead of the French technologically, inundated France with their industrial products, spelling ruin for French artisans. Some of these products would even be used in revolutionary riots. While food shortages were due to bad crops and weather, those who were hungry blamed them on the rich. Meanwhile, pampered and pensioned in Versailles, far away from their roots, the nobility had become another adversary that would further undermine the system. The same went for lower orders of the clergy, who shared the general misery of their flock. The king didn't see it coming. The nobles would bring about a revolution to which they too would fall victim. In the summer of 1791, with the revolution heating up, Louis approved the perilous plan to secretly flee from Paris to the supposedly loyal troops in the east. The royal family's arrest at Varennes would spell the end of absolute monarchy. On August the 10th, when the grounds of Tuileries were invaded, Louis took refuge in the National Assembly, but the damage was done. Shortly thereafter, he was stripped of his power, arrested, and sent to the medieval fortress of the Temple, and from there to his doom. His trial was brief, and ultimately only for show. Witnesses who testified in his favor were massacred in 2 instances, while documents that could have proved him innocent were not passed on to his defenders. In short, it was a travesty. The judges had all but decided the verdict at the outset. The absolute monarch, who didn't even reign over his court, was influenced by all who surrounded him. "What should I do?" he asked the reactionary French writer Raviol in 1789. "Act like a king," came the reply. If only. Louis, who had a passion for geography and great exploration, and whose hobbies were locksmithing and carpentry, It was simply not cut out for the job. Oh my goodness, we got so many people in here. Let me just take a second. Yes, Isaacson is talking about the sad life of Louis XVI, I think. And we've got Outworld in here. How you doing? It's great to see you again. I feel like... Okay, let me finish this mission and then I'll do through a big round of shout-outs because we have got some really good people in chat and I want to make sure that that everybody gets their chance. Chance in the sun. Or du soleil. In my experience, you should never trust a man who lists his hobby as locksmithing. Oh, God damn it!
Easy, big fella.
Okay, I cannot parry that.
Not your day, is it, Victor? To your health, gentlemen.
You boy, stop! What are you doing there?
Running!
Why do they all sound English? Guards in blue are the police. If you attack or kill anyone in their line of sight, they will attack.
He's getting away!
Ah, sacre bleu! Oh, well, let's get our 2 dodges in. Oops. What do you mean? I dodged that. 1, 2. Haha! Okay, I'll wait until they... Okay, here we go. Like a real assassin. So I'm a little curious how many people here have played this game. I know Johnny Big Time has, and Jess was the first person I saw play this. I think she played it very close to its release, actually.
Getting back in there now. Catch them back at home, I suppose.
Memory complete! Oh, apparently I was supposed to parry attacks as well. Free running, hold, shift to sprint, automatically jump. Well, I've been doing that already. Alright, let's get some shoutouts. I'll try and do it in the order of appearance. So we have got the exclamation mark Johnny, I think it's exclamation mark Johnny Big Time, but we've got Johnny in the channel, retweeted the stream. A really wonderful caster in his own right. He does a little bit of everything. He's been going through Far Cry 5 most recently, but he is somebody with just a great personality. He's actually we had a impromptu movie night with him and Jess last night, which I don't know, I liked it quite a bit, and I hope you two did as well. But Johnny has got a great personality. It's always on display on his channel. He has got a great, I almost want to say a great curiosity with games. He's willing to try anything. And I've played Chaos Reborn with him. I've played Dying Light with him. At some point, if the propaganda campaign works... No, not. I talked with Johnny afterwards about one of the things I really like about doing movie nights with you, actually. Because when you gasp during certain moments of the... Hey, it's a tear in time and... Oh, it went away. A tear in time and space. But again, if the propaganda campaign works, I think we're going to add Johnny Big Time to a Stellaris playthrough as well, if I can. If I can get Johnny Big Time, Eyes of Sin, and Jesse Quill into a Stellaris game together, I will be happy. Oh, we've got Kite. We're gonna have another person to shout out in this. So I'm gonna walk home because it's going to take me a bit to go through all of these. But Johnny, like I said, he's somebody who, in addition to the fact that he's got a great personality and he has got a great willingness to just sort of try anything, a guy who's truly got a love of games and is able to communicate the fun in just about any title. He's one of my favorite people to watch on Twitch, and I really encourage you guys to check him out. He's definitely one of the people who I think has just a natural talent for entertaining audiences. Not to be outdone, we have got the lovely Miss Jessie Quill, obviously my mod, somebody who has been casting a little bit more often, and I'd love to see that trend continue, although I know that she's got many good things going on in her life. She's very busy, and so it makes me value the time that she spends with me, the time that she spends in the channel, and also the time that she spends kind of covering the... she kind of spends doing her own casts, but she really is somebody who has got she's got a very good cast on her own. I always like to call her the kind of the streamer that the partnered streamers would watch on their off time. But that's definitely, I don't necessarily like pitting her in relation to partners, because I think one of the things that's really important is that through just modding this channel, she is bringing a lot of experience, not just modding, but community managing people. She's also worked for a while in influencer relations. She has many talents in terms of IT. And I think one of the things that has helped is Jess has done a very good job of gently showing me some of the assumptions that guys tend to have when they talk to women about computers. This will come through moderating her own channel, but also just little things like her lived experiences. And it's given me a perspective. I know, especially because I finished watching a debate on political correctness, it's one of these things that is very easy to get very defensive about, right? Well, I don't talk to people that way. That's not quite the point. Jess has done a really good job of communicating some of the very unfair assumptions that people will make, and doesn't do so in like a poor me or like whiny sort of sense, just articulates it clearly and advocates for it, and does so on her own channel as well. And I think one of the things that's really effective, and probably is more, I won't even necessarily as an effective technique so much as just a reflection of what she's like as a person. One of the things I always like shouting out about her is when she does play story-based games, because again, whether I agree with her take or not, she always does a very good job of articulating motivations of characters or her thoughts on particular scenes. She leverages her psychology background, and I think just does a really great job of finding the humanity in the characters of the games that she plays. And so, again, another wonderful caster who I owe quite a bit in terms of just in terms of sort of what she brings to my own cast, as well as just as an entertaining caster and an informative caster in her own right. I would actually argue, I mean, I always used to say she's the heart to my head. If you guys like the economic stuff that I talk about, I think Jess is a great example of how streamers can talk about some of the other social sciences in an accessible way, probably more accessible than when I talk about history or economics. On top of that, we have got the Eyes of Sin in chat. Now, Eyes of Sin has a little bit more of an irregular schedule than some of the other people I'll be shouting out, but that's because she's had a big move and she's also working on getting a computer and such. Well, that's just fashion, the Eyes of Sin. Why wouldn't you? It could possibly be a sword thing, because I remember when I was fencing, one side, the side that would be exposed, the sword arm, would be more heavily padded than the hand that I kept behind me. I don't know if that's what the designers were going for. I'm not entirely sure the fabric of a shirt is going to be that defensive, but I don't know. You can ask the developers that. But Eyes of Sin, if you guys have seen the emotes in the channel, the Eyes of Sin was the one who did those. She's got a great art portfolio. She's got a wonderful personality. She's been playing some Stardew Valley recently, and she's actually somebody we did a small fundraiser for because she had a bit of misfortune befall her, and was somebody who was very gracious in accepting that help, and the people who came out to support her were absolutely wonderful. She did, I mean, again, it's easy. It's very easy to do charity stuff on Twitch, but I think one of the things that really struck me was the outpouring of support from people who I had not really seen before, and it's very easy to see why people kind of came out and wanted to help her. Again, she's somebody who is also a mod in quite a few channels, and one of the things that's so nice about Sin is that she really cannot think poorly of another individual. I'd almost say to a fault, but I don't think I can really say that that's a fault. I think that's a very rare trait, and especially because I was talking about, you know, a somewhat acriminous debate, and talking about how, you know, sometimes I don't think the format works very well in terms of communicating ideas. To have someone like Sin, who is very non-judgmental, and is able to see the good in people, is a very rare and a very important ability to have. And so, you know, whether or not this is on display when she's playing Stardew Valley, I think it is, but that's because I've got the benefit of knowing her off cast. She really is a very nice person. She's a really talented artist. So if you ever are looking for some artwork for your stream, or if you want to have a nice drawing, or you want to give a gift to somebody, she's somebody who I can give a very good recommendation to. Her pixel art is spectacular as well. But she has done a lovely look at that. Oh, again, just an absolute sweetheart, and somebody who has got many talents. All right, I think working down the list, we have got Outworld, who you all will recognize the majestic purple check mark. A great one is in our midst. One of the things I love the most about Outworld is, I mean, obviously, to a number of people, you know, and on Twitch, partnership can mean a lot of different things, and to a lot of people, partnership can mean everything. And obviously, there are many stories of finding out how people behave once they attain power. Now, I think a lot of you will know that partnership maybe doesn't mean quite the same thing to me as others. So I don't mean to be disingenuous in this comment, because I mean, I think people can stand on their merits as a broadcaster and as a person, not necessarily on the validation of a Twitch affiliate. But I think one of the things that's really noteworthy about Outworld is you can see his stream, you can see the quality behind it, and the hard work. I mean, he's somebody who I remember from times when he was suffering from Australian internet, and I think there were a number of outages on like the very first stream I saw of his. But he's somebody with a persistence and a talent, and is 100% the same person I remember watching as a different named caster. But somebody who I also think in private is somebody who is willing to sort of stand up for sort of the right thing, the side of the angels. Somebody who is very willing to stand aside from sort of a popular opinion if it's the right thing to do. And on top of that, he is one of the very few speedrunners who I watch. It's not normally my kind of thing. And it's always, I mean, it's always so easy to sort of shout someone out for an Australian accent. It's like, you know, that's the least interesting thing. Although I will, you know, mention it because I would love you guys to discover streamers that you like. If you like Australian accents, check out Outworld. But again, I talk a lot about the people behind it because all of these streamers are people who reflect the the personalities that I am describing are reflected in their streams. I'm sure I could make some very pompous point on, in the time of Billy Mitchell and all of these scandals in the, the speedrunning community, it's good to have ethical voices. No, that's not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to say is that Outworld is a really great person. He's somebody, again, with a very solid ethical core, at least. I mean, I hear this more so from third parties. But again, somebody who 100% is willing to stand up for the right thing, somebody who will, not allow a crowd to sort of sway a particular opinion. And again, just consistently puts in a solid show. Just somebody who I think is definitely one of these examples of somebody who sort of puts in the work and was rewarded for it. And it's really nice to see people who are solid individuals, who are very much, when the cameras aren't rolling, are very much the people that you see on cast. It is always very rewarding to see people like that meet with success on that platform or whatever they set their mind out to. Yeah, I do speak rather quickly, Avia. Sorry about that. Also, because I have a tendency to, I don't know, when I'm really getting into the, when I'm really getting into when I'm getting into the spirit of things, or when I'm getting excited, I do tend to speak a little bit more rapidly. So apologies for that, Avia, because I know that makes it a little bit difficult to follow. But yeah, actually, Capiati, I'm talking so much about his person, but maybe I should actually mention it. As the name might indicate, he is a Mortal Kombat streamer, and I've never played the original Mortal Kombat games. I've only played like the most recent one. Again, one of the things, it sounds so backhanded for me to say. So I don't normally watch speedrunners, but I kind of have to tolerate Outworld because he's here. I think Kite260 got me to do some lines from Rap God when I had my mouth full of stuff. But yeah. I do need to admit one of the things that makes me talk a little bit more about Outworld's personality as well is I am not in a position to rank. I mean, he has records, right? That should speak for itself. I'm not in a position to rank streams like that because they are not my normal thing. However, because they are not my normal thing, and the fact that he is able to still make them entertaining and just be an absolute gentleman whenever people stop by, because I do not get to watch his cast nearly as much as I would like. He's definitely somebody you should check out. Finally, last but not least, and I am really going to have to pull out all the stops here because Kite is also an absolute sweetheart, if I'm allowed to say that about guys. I know that's sometimes a bit of a he's a bit of a I don't know. Is that something you can say about? I feel like you can say that about guys as much as. Anyways, Kite is again another really nice person, and I talked a little bit about Jess and her modding and Eyes of Sin and her modding, and I apologize if some of you guys do some modding duties that I haven't recognized. These are just ones that I sort of know. Jesse Quill is definitively saying that I can call guys sweethearts. I'm sorry to put the toxic masculinity into chat, guys. Jeez. But yeah, Kite. There's a lot of talk on streams about different ways that you can support a stream, and all of it is true. Do not get me wrong at all. Sometimes they come off as like solicitations for donations. It's like, there's many ways of supporting the stream, but you actually know it's all about the ducats, right? Yeah, he did not come off well on that debate, that's for sure, Jess. But no, like, I think especially being able to talk about, you've got all these aspects of things that go into a really good Twitch channel, right? you need to have a good caster, right? You can be, in the end, you can only get so far in terms of connections and so on. And there are absolutely incumbency advantages on Twitch, and there are probably people who you'll see and you'll say, well, I don't really see what people see in that, and maybe you're even right in those cases. But obviously there are casters, and that's what we're all here for. And I talked about Jesse Quill and Eyes of Sin and their experience as moderators, and the real value and the real problem in identifying the value of moderators is how much stuff a caster doesn't need to think about because the moderators are on the ball. I'm very lucky to have Jess for that very reason, because you guys know how distracted I get and how easy it is to derail me. But it is also important to recognize, of course, that it is a community that helps. And it's tough, especially when you are a smaller caster. There's always that fear that maybe, somebody can toe the line a little bit on saying something because you don't want to offend them, and you want to, you want to have a viewer count, you want to establish it. And so maybe you let people do things that they shouldn't. It's a hard impulse sometimes to suppress. But it's one of these cases where having a good environment, having people who are pleasant to be around, counts for a lot. And Kite is really a personification of that. And again, this is readily apparent on his broadcast. He is one of the nicest people. I can tell. I won't tell you because that is really between the caster and Kite. I just happened to either be a moderator or sort of an affiliate of given communities when I found out about these things. But Kite has been supportive from everything from like a financial supporter. I mean, he's obviously somebody who's subscribed here, to, just a pillar and a stand-up guy in so many communities. And it's easy to see why on his broadcast. I think one of the things that really sticks out to me with Kite is his co-op casts, because I have struggled in the past to be able to do co-op casts. I am really dependent on who I am casting with as to whether or not the co-op casts go well. And I think Jess and Johnny can tell you this. They carry me whenever I do co-op casts with them. I think there might be another co-op cast that I'm doing for someone else that's on the books, but I still need to see where that's going. But Kite, Kite makes it look easy. He's casted with, I'm not going to tell you who, but he has casted with people who I've tried to co-op cast with and I struggled with. Kite does it well. And like I said, it's easy to talk about how he is supportive to other communities, and just the way that he conducts himself in chat. All of that is apparent on cast. And again, it's easy to see why he does so well with his co-op cast, because again, he sees the good in people. He sees the value in them. He is a really nice person. I have these times where even if I'm only there, and I will tell him straight up, it's like, hi Kite, please don't shout me out. I am just here to say hi to you. I need to run off. Sometimes it's because I can do my own cast, but I'm not going to run in and say it's like, oh, hey guys, I'm starting my own stream here. Hope you're enjoying Kites. And it does not matter. I can signal to him as clearly as possible that I am just sort of waving the flag and saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. And he will take the time and shout me out. So, again, just somebody with an absolute heart of gold, somebody so giving. He's another person who, again, I can give a very, a great recommendation for. Definitely a very diverse streamer. I've seen him do everything from Infamous to Battle Block Theater. I know he's done Portal in the past. I don't even really know if he has a favorite genre or favorite game. But again, just another great personality behind it. And one thing that I can say out of all of these, they're in pretty diverse time zones. So of course, the big thing is I would recommend that you guys follow all of them, because they will allow you to, if you all have different time zones, somebody will be casting out of that list at some time. They're all people who are worth following and being informed when they are online. And they're all people who I owe so much for being just such sweethearts, gentlemen, stand-up citizens, and other patrons in some cases. They're all people who have really made my experience on Twitch better. And it is why I am willing to take so much time to shout out each and every one of them. All right, let me take a quick second here and catch... All right. All right, I've got some rulings on sweetheart status. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about the co-op cast out world. I absolutely know the feeling, and I'm very glad that the chalk quill emote combo. I'm actually going to take a second. I know the game's on an unpleasant pause at the moment. I'm going to show you the combo that I generated that I am so proud of. That's my favorite combo. All right, back to the game. Elise leaves for Paris in the morning, sneak into the ball at the Palais de Versailles to spend the evening with her. I believe that is the first time...
Bonsoir, Olivier. Has Monsieur de la Serre returned?
Senor de la Serre is not expected until late.
Ah, well. I suppose I'll just pass the time with Elise, then.
Don't get your hopes up.
Hello,
Mademoiselle is in a private soiree
S1YM.
in her honor, at the palace.
A party? I wasn't invited.
Neither were the horses.
I'm sure she just misplaced my invitation. I'll find my own way in. How late is late?
Perhaps an hour, perhaps 3, perhaps not at all. I do not question the comings and goings of my betters.
I'll just wait here, then.
Go to de la Serre's office. Sacre bleu, I am hearing the French. By the way, there's some really healthy numbers here, guys, so thank you very much for that. Like I said, on Fridays when I start late, I don't normally get that, so I do thank you. Actually, I have a fun story. I need to be careful. I don't think I'm going to say where this happened, but if you know me off cast and you really want to know, as long as you don't live in my city, I can tell you. It's recent, and it's one of these things where I think it can come off the wrong.
Under the door. He'd see it the instant he returned. I'd best not leave without dropping off this letter.
It can come off as in the wrong way, but I ran into someone who, when they found out about my
There. Safe and sound, and only slightly delayed. And now,
science,
to the
yes.
palace. I couldn't sneak through a sewer in these threads, much less a ball. Here, mon ami. Let me take care of that.
Well, thank you, young man.
What a jerk. But yeah, so they found out I was a caster and definitely tried to make something of the power play of like, oh, so how many viewers do you have? And then, when I gave them an honest accounting.
Maximilien Robespierre.
Oh.
No guest.
Arno. Le Chevalier du Télème.
Invitation, s'il vous plaît.
About that, I had one, of course, but on the way...
No invitation, no admittance. Now clear the queue. Next, please. Charles Gabriel Sivet. 2 guests. Next, please.
Oh, Johnny, it's just the way the world works. But yeah, so the big thing is, like, it's one of these things where it's very straightforward to deal with bullies like that. And the main thing is that, when he's trying the, like, oh, well, you're probably, like, just starting out or something like that. And, no, I'm not. I've been doing this for a few years. I don't mind confronting that. I don't mind confronting the concurrent viewers thing. And I don't even particularly want to play the game of saying that, I'm undiscovered talent or something like that. I think having a show that's worth watching is not even a necessary condition. It's a convenient, I think it's a convenient measure. What's the point on doing this if you don't want to be if you don't want to be good at what you're doing? But the big point on this one is I would consider it to be probably the height of ingratitude to turn around and say, the number of people who are here right now. Yeah, absolutely, Outworld. Like, this is the big thing. Like, if I want to throw my weight around, ask me some econ questions. Do you want to talk about drone strikes in Pakistan? Because I've wrote a paper on that. I can give you the data. I could recreate that study for you if you want, and I can answer all of the questions that you have, and I can probably point out the flaws that you guys didn't ask me about. If I want to throw my weight around, I know what I'm really good at. But as Outworld pointed out, it's not a dick measuring contest. I'd obviously already win that, if you know, ladies. But oh my goodness! Now I feel very, very conscious. So thanks for that, Outworld. Maybe I'll stop talking about penises. But no, the important thing about this one is that anybody who is willing. So the way that, if you do struggle with this, by the way, the way to think about this, and that I find useful about this, is that it is very ungrateful for me to be bothered by somebody saying like, "Oh, you've only got 9 viewers right now." That's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is, despite the fact that I have put the game on hold to lecture you guys, and look at all of these guys who are apparently strangling themselves in audiences. You guys are willing to put up with that, and you're willing to say through your follow or through your, your concurrent view, however you choose to express that, to say, I like this enough not to leave. And I would much rather focus on being worth watching to those who either find the stream or are here than trying to please some guy who just wants to make himself feel better over... I will tell you exactly why that was said, and it involves a failing on his particular part. Which again, like, I need to anonymize it a little bit, just because I don't like being gossipy in the sense of like, here's the names and here are the people you should shame, right? I think that's not, I don't think that's a good look. But let's see if I can get away with this. Yeah, it's not nearly, oh my god, sacre bleu! Yeah, I mean, I just consider the source, but the other thing, if you ever do get bothered with that, just realize that worrying about that number, that very, in some cases, arbitrary number, just realize that in one thing what it's doing is being ungrateful for the followers and the viewers that you do have. And I think some people will, I mean, it's good to be ambitious, it is good to want to achieve better metrics, but to get it to a point where people can sort of have power over you is where I think you run the risk. And I think in that case, it's a positive thing to say I want to better myself and better my viewing metrics, but you can also frame it in a negative way to say I'm not grateful for what I have. And that's, at least for me, how I try and remain centered on that. So. I'm not going to repeat what... Ah!
Off with you!
Okay, my bad. Oh, press control to navigate silently.
They're having a party.
What's this party for, anyway?
Not sure. Some kind of confirmation ceremony for the De La Serre girl.
I am good at assassinating in Creed. You don't understand why people stream, you watch and enjoy, but you do not understand why people... So I won't lie, Avia, like, this is gonna sound a little self-serving. It doesn't necessarily make the game better. I think one reason why I stream is that I really like sharing things I enjoy with people. Okay, I've created a problem for myself. Let's try and get to a slightly more secure place.
Is it shift change yet?
I can't get over... I don't know if he's gonna... This is some pretty wacky,
Look at that one. Pretty sure his shoes cost more than my rent.
No, yeah, doors don't work. But yeah, so I think you know, in some ways it can sometimes be a vehicle for me to... So in some senses I just like sharing the game. I think that's one thing that drives a lot of streamers. But another thing I can say is that sometimes game...
Stop! Get down!
Will you let me back in if I do?
What? Certainly not!
Well then, if it's all the same to you, I think I'll stay up here.
But yeah, so it's also a vehicle for me to explain some things that I find very interesting, but are not necessarily accessible. So obviously when I play Crusader Kings, I'm able to talk about political economy in a way that like in a way that's maybe a little more accessible than
M'accorderiez-vous cette danse pour gentilhomme?
oui. No? No.
Merci. Un autre jour.
But yeah, part of it's sharing the experiences, but another thing is I do find it a good vehicle for showing things that are normally boring when presented in an ordinary fashion. It can be a good vehicle to communicate some of those ideas in a more effective and palatable way. And then, of course, we get to see Johnny Big Time have amazing reactions to basically everything that happens. So Johnny Big Time has always enjoyed sharing experiences with others, always called people over to watch cool stuff when you were smaller. We had a good time. You like to share your fun moments, make people laugh. Jesse Quill says it's like couch gaming with people again, but digitally, and it's a way for your parents and siblings to see you more often, and you like the attention. Avia, I'm not 100% sure what you meant by that question. Is there a way that you can rephrase it? I think I just didn't quite get the context when you asked it. All right, the only daughter of François and Julie de la Serre, Elise grew up in a modestly wealthy but incredibly privileged environment. As a member of the aristocracy in the waning days of the Ancien Regime, she had access to the finest tutors, medicine, and food available. After her mother's death in 1778, Elise spent a great deal of time traveling, including several years of study in Paris. And because everybody likes her, there's that milady. Apparently her face would fly apart in earlier versions of this game. All right. This is trenchcoat wearing gentle sir simulator Find the girl you like and follow her all around. Send her a letter. Scene.
She always did love the chase.
All women love the chase. You have to chase them. You need to show that you're worthy. Continue. Persist. No matter what. See?
You seem to have caused quite a commotion.
Well, what can I say? You were always a bad influence.
Oh, you were a worse one.
See it work, chat. That guy on the left, he's staring. He's so unhappy.
Are you wearing one of my father's suits?
Are you wearing a dress?
Don't even start. I feel like a mummy wrapped up in this thing.
Must be quite an occasion to get you so fancy.
It's not like that. Truth be told, it's a lot of ceremony and pontification. Dull as dirt.
Well, when you don't invite me to your parties, everyone suffers.
I did try, but my father was adamant.
Your father?
Go. I'll distract them.
What? You're kicking me out?
It's complicated. I'll explain later, but for now, out the window.
Oh, no. You're not turning this into a repeat of that apple orchard.
Stop being such a baby. I'm sure there aren't any guard dogs this time. Go!
They have a prior. Of course, they have a prior relationship. He held a door open for her once, right? Uh-oh.
Party duty, but no. Waste of time. There's nobody out here.
Can't get into conflict. If he turns around, I'm screwed. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, I was gonna say Outworld. So I noticed the cinematics seem to have been pre-rendered because like the hair just doesn't quite look the same in the game, but like they very obviously just pulled out all the stops when making the model for Elise. Like she's she's just an absolute vision. So. It makes me wish that I knew 3D modeling to make something that beautiful.
You all right, monsieur? Too much of the king's champagne? Monsieur? Monsieur de la Serre? Monsieur de la Serre!
Sylvain, come away! Guards! Help! Murder!
Bon Dieu, he's killed Lord de la Serre.
I feel like I've done this bit on stream before, but I think I had to delete a save to get it working again, so... I don't think the Bastille's been stormed yet, Eyes of Sin.
It wasn't me! Damian wielded the knife! Please, have mercy!
Talia est omnis divisa in partes tres.
They're killing us! Oh God, have mercy! They're killing the prisoners in here!
That's enough of that, you degenerate!
One of the things I heard about the storming of the Bastille is that there was this great sort of...
Where am I?
Oh, I'm going to shut up.
Quise ultra morti oferant, facilius reperiuntur, quantum dolorem patienter.
Is it Maria? Located in the heart of Paris, the Maria's district's finest hours would come during the 17th century when many aristocrats who lived there transformed it into a fashionable district. In the 18th century, the nobility gradually abandoned the district in favor of the Faubourg Saint-Honoré on the Faubourg Saint-Germain. In spite of this departure, the Marais would always retain its image as an aristocratic district, which meant that, with the coming of the Revolution, rioters would set about destroying the many symbols of royalty and nobility that were found there. It was a wonderfully convenient sort of one-stop shop for those of a riotous persuasion. With the Revolution, the district changed progressively. The abandoned townhouses were taken up by merchants to form warehouses or workshops. The beautiful homes were thus preserved, and so the Marais became inhabited by more modest people who kept shops or practiced craft trades, which in turn gave way to small factories and semi-industrialized trades of the 19th century. So yeah, the story I've heard about the Bastille was that when they open, there's a story, all the political prisoners and the enemies of the established powers are being held there with great injustice. But the people who they actually released were like murderers and just generally unsavory people, that there weren't really any political prisoners inside at the time. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a really good story. The Bastille was one of the many construction projects undertaken under Charles V and was intended to protect the Porte Saint-Antoine Gate and its adjoining St. Paul Palace. As the centuries wore on and the fortress became less useful as a fortification, it was used more and more often as a prison, finally being completely dedicated to that purpose under the reign of Louis XIII. The prisoners held there, who rarely numbered more than 40 each year, were most commonly political prisoners. Well, I can shut up. By 1789, the Bastille was deemed useless and costly to maintain, with 250 soldiers for a mere 9 prisoners. I had an idea for how to bring costs down. Fire 247 soldiers. Their system is like having a plane with 1 seat but hundreds of captains. Hang on, that sounds brilliant. This was a time when Paris was packed with prisons of all shapes and sizes. Nonetheless, it was seen as a symbol of oppression from the Ancien Regime, and when the French Revolution broke out, it was one of the first buildings to be looted and destroyed. The revolutionaries' quarry became quite literally that, as the mob demolished the building and put its stones to better use. Some of the stones were used to consolidate the Pont de la Concorde, others were taken as individual or collective relics. Many were carved into tiny models of the entire fortress and sold as souvenirs. And Francois de la Serre, deceased. Little information about Francois de la Serre survives. A minor nobleman, he kept an estate in Versailles and a smaller house in Paris, and was known to be a close confidant of the king and Mirabeau. His wife Julie died sometime around 1777, and de la Serre was left to raise his daughter Elise on his own. He died under mysterious circumstances in 1789. You see this sort of whitewashing a lot when a notable Templar falls out of favor. Someone steps out of line or fails to keep up with the time, and suddenly the rich tapestry that is a unique, lovely human being is reduced to a historical footnote about how terrible they are. A bit like the Americans and their celebrities, really. Nope.
Welcome to your new home.
Oh, I kind of liked how he was getting jiggy with it. Let's try that again.
You should feel honored. These days, the Bastille is reserved for madmen, deviants, and traitors.
All right, so much for that.
Where he's staring at, pisspot.
Where's the piss pot? I don't see one. Sacre bleu.
Hello? I must speak to someone!
Hey, who let that violin player in there?
Where'd you come by this, pisspot?
I'm in no mood for this. Give it back.
Take it back. If you think you can.
I am gonna beat the crap out of him.
Well struck, pisspot. See if your defense is as good.
How's that for defense?
For a broken antique.
The only broken antique in here is flapping his idiot jaw.
Say that again.
That's a nice comeback, Arno. I'm starting to like you more. And I'm gonna hit the guy behind you just to make a point. Also, that completely would have broken that guy's knee. Look at that!
Give me what's mine, and go back to your crazy drawings, old man.
Drawings.
These here. Everywhere. Scribbled like chicken scratches all over this cell. Where?
Come here, you little pisspot.
Get your hands off me!
Look at the wall.
I'm a big piss pot.
Concentrate.
What are they?
Messages from the past. I had myself thrown into after prisons in Paris in search of these. What's your name, boy?
Arno. Arno Victor Dorian.
Dorian. Of course. Pierre Belec. I knew your father.
Bully for you.
He died at Versailles. In what? 76? 77? December, as I recall, no witnesses.
How did you...
Your father was an assassin, Arno. He gave his life, fighting for the liberty of all mankind. You stick with me, you might just live long enough to join the Brotherhood. Honor your father's memory.
Listen, I'm sure your little cult is a delightful bunch, but I'm not interested. The only thing I care about is finding Elise.
How are you planning on doing that from in here?
I'd like to think my beard would be a little bit fuller after 2 months.
Focus, pisspot.
What the hell is going on out there?
Citizens are restless. Keep an ear open. Opportunity might just come knocking soon.
That was cannon fire.
Sometimes opportunity sounds a lot like cannon fire.
Secure the prisoners.
Follow my lead.
Pierre Bellic, born in New France sometime around 1740. Hey, that's where I am! Pierre Bellic joined the French colonial militia at age 16 at the start of the 7 Years' War. He served with some distinction, earning a full commendation for valor at the Battle of Fort Bull, but mustered out and traveled to France in 1762. As luck would have it, just barely missing a massive purge of the colonial branch of the Brotherhood by the Templars. Don't worry, those don't happen anymore. Well, hardly ever. You know what? Lock your doors just to be safe. He seems to have settled in Paris, judging by the numerous arrest records in his name over the next 2 decades. He may have been at the Bastille in 1789, but no conclusive proof naming him as one of the prisoners has ever surfaced.
I told you this was going to end badly.
Silence. Stay back.
Liberté! I didn't even get to do the fraternity, egalite and fraternity.
Right. Let's get out of this show. Keep him off me for a bit, pisspot. One of them stabs me. I'll launch you to it.
I'll bring you down a peg.
Let's get my perfect parries in. One of the things I really liked about this one is the combat system's a bit reworked, so it's a little bit less, you know, I push this button and just completely dominate. There's a little bit more thought into the combat, which I like. Ha ha! What do you mean put your back into it? Put your back into that lockpicking.
Take your time. What a show.
Put your back.
Have your guts out.
Get out of war, bastards.
God, that was satisfying.
You've got to be kidding.
Whee! Whoop, 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 whoop. What are you doing back?
Out the window. Come on, speed.
Nope, never mind. Sorry, kidding. Where's the window? Bellic! Bellic! I am bad at this. Let me out! All right, well, that's how the game makes it, so that you can't take on all the guards. You guys did see me trying to get through the window, though.
Got to be kidding.
Got it. Let's go, pisspot.
Ah!
Out the window.
Get behind him. Come on. Quickly. While the crowd
Oh, for God's sake. Not quite what I had in mind, but There we go, round 2. I want to see what's going on. See, this is the thing that I really like about Assassin's Creed 4. This is a really big thing that I don't think AAAs get enough credit for. If you do a game about the French Revolution, and it's the one where you put a lot of technology into realizing these big crowds, like, to me, that's a big deal, and that's a really good choice, because there's something lost in the experience. There's something that's lost in the experience if you don't take the time to, find a way of sort of bringing those really iconic moments. Oops. Oops. I need to be paying a little bit better attention to what's going on. Yeah, so like obviously there's so much that's been written about this, and there's so many famous images, and all of them involve crowds. So if you're going to make a game about the French Revolution and you're not going to at least try to convey some of those really iconic images, then I don't really think you're covering the subject as well. And similarly with Battlefield 1, you've got that really great opening to Through Mud and Blood, of the guy being sort of this ambassador's chauffeur and his pure white gloves, and then turning to these really dirty ones after the war.
What are you waiting for, Pistol? It's time to jump.
What? Prison scrambled your brains, old man.
Drink took care of that a long time ago. Now get up here!
I can't, that's impossible.
Impossible? That's the purview of every assassin boy. If you can pluck your head out of your own arse, come find us. Make a great fit. Goodbye, piss pot!
You! Back away from the ledge!
Oh, hey guys, 2 hours in, we're playing Assassin's Creed Unity. I don't know, guys, how would you respond? Some crazy guy looking you in the eye, says, "Do what I do, you'd make a great fit," and then leaping off of the top of a building. Those doors look like eyes.
Please?
Well, hello, beautiful.
That's some welcome.
One can't be too careful. But after what happened,
Elise,
haven't you done enough to repay my father's kindness?
Elise, please. You can't believe I killed Monsieur de la Serre. Your father, he wasn't the man you thought he was. Neither of our fathers were.
I know exactly who my father was, Arnaud. And I know who yours was. I suppose it was inevitable. You an assassin, me a Templar.
You?
Does that shock you? My father always meant for me to follow in his footsteps. Now all I can do is avenge him.
I swear to you, I had nothing to do with his death.
But you did.
No. No! By my life, I swear I didn't. Is that?
A letter intended for my father the day he was murdered. Read it.
Grandmaster de la Serre, I have learned through my agents that an individual within our order plots against you. I beg you to be on your guard at the initiation tonight. Trust no one, not even those you call friends. May the Father of Understanding guide you. L.
I found that on the floor of my father's room. A no pin.
I didn't know.
Neither did my father.
How could I have known?
Just go. Please.
I have a very personal question, Jesse Quill, if you're still around. You may not be, though. I'm not sure about the hour. Oh, by the way, thank you very much, Jess and Kite. Actually, there's a few. Hang on. There's a bunch of you that retweeted. I'm not getting all the info, though. So the question was, what you think, like, we transpose this world into the modern one. Do you think I would be a Templar or an assassin?
The devil is this supposed to mean?
Paris is now open. You can explore the city or play the next single-player mission to continue Arno's story. I think we can get a couple in. The storming of the Bastille. With the price of bread at an all-time high in July of 1789, Paris was on the brink of revolt. Believe me, at that stage it had been revolting for some time. When word reached the city, Louis XVI had dismissed his finance minister. It was taken as a sign of an impending coup attempt by conservative factions within the government. Seeking to arm themselves against this coup, a procession of radicals gathered and headed for the left bank, where they seized some 40,000 muskets from the armory of the Hôtel des Invalides. However, there was no powder or shot to be had, and so the revolutionaries made for the Bastille. At the time, there were over 30,000 pounds of gunpowder and shot stored within the prison. The governor, Bernard-René de Launay, had less than 100 men, mainly veteran soldiers and Swiss guards, to hold the prison against perhaps 1,000 insurgents. De Launay refused to surrender, and his forces were quickly overwhelmed. The powder was seized, and the prisoners, all 7 remaining in the Bastille, were freed. When told of the attack, Duc de la Rochefoucauld, Louis XVI was reported to ask, "Is it a revolt?" The Duke replied, "No, sire, it is a revolution. You say tomato, I say tomato." Actually, that one doesn't work quite so well written down. Very true, Avia. I don't care what side I'm on as long as I get Elise. I like to imagine me as an assassin only because you feel that the neat outfits would look dashing on me. Oh, that's very kind of you, Eyes of Sin. Although I think Haytham Kenway had a pretty good looking get up. All right, I'm gonna loot some chests first because, well, that's what one does. Oh, let's find out more about Elise de la Serre. I said, let's find out more about Elise de la Serre. More about Elise! The only daughter of Francois and Julie de la Serre, Elise... Oh, we already got this. After her father's death, she seems to vanish from documented Hang on. Oh, it seems like she was getting a healthy dose of Templar training and indoctrination during this time. Must be nice to get your training along the French Riviera. I had to make do with a leaky shed in Wolverhampton. After her father's death, she seems to vanish from documented history, likely as a result of revolutionary efforts to purge records of the nobility, or the Templars trying to cover up one of their regime changes. Alright, looks like we had some other details I missed. So, newspaper stands and printing presses. One of the most spectacular aspects of commerce during the Revolutionary period was the boom in printing driven by the explosion in the number of publications. Before 1789, censorship tightly controlled the production of literary works, including periodicals. With the Revolution, however, the printing industry blossomed. In June 1789, only 5 newspapers were on sale. By December of the same year, that figure had risen to 130. Among the most important papers of the Revolution were Camille Desmoulins' Le Vieux Cordier, Jacques Brissot's Girondiste Le Patriote Français, Jacques-René Hébert's Le Père Duchesne's, and Jean-Paul Marat's L'Ami du Peuple. Sorry, Avia, I know my French is not what it needs to be. These papers reached a huge number of Parisians, even those who were unfamiliar with reading, since it was not uncommon to find individuals who read articles aloud in the middle of the street to persuade others. So we've got 1 vote for assassin. Oh, thank you, Avia. That's very kind of you. Songs. All right. Composed in 1790, the song glorifies the events surrounding the July 14th, 1789, and recounts the episode that led to the taking of the Bastille. Rather than surrender, the Bastille's governor, Delaunay, chose to resist. The text is unusual in that the taking of the Bastille is attributed to the bourgeoisie and not to the people in general. Ah! Thank you, Avia. Alright, let's see where we're gonna go. I guess we should probably head to the assassin icon. But there are many assassin icons. One thing I really do like about this, like starting you off with a nice sort of vista of the environment. I know we kind of got to see this in AC3, but again, just it's hard to say. I know like oranges looks good. Oh, I think I'm running into a little bit of... Let me just see. I'm getting a couple of encoding messages. Let me see if there's something I can do in the background. Sadly, I have a couple processes running which I can't kill. Yeah, I think we're just going to have to live with this for a bit. If I have too many... If I have too many problems, I'll try. Ooh, yeah, it's
If you wish to join the cult of Baphomet, you must steal 2 holy chalices from the Cathedral of Notre Dame and bring them to me.
Baphomet. Baphomet is an occult figure of worship, largely depicted with the head of the goat, featuring large horns and sometimes with wings. That would really annoy me. Either put my wings in your picture or don't. Don't just sometimes give me wings. What about my wings is forgettable to you? I've got wings, for goodness sake. You always do the goat's head, don't you? Well, give me my bloody wings then. Transcripts of the trials of the Knights Templar seem to indicate that Baphomet may have been worshipped among them, although that is inconclusive. It's possible that the Knights Templar brought these beliefs back with them from their journeys during the Crusades. So I think there's a couple of inefficiencies either in OBS or it could be the way that this game is being done, because I'm noticing I'm getting a few like hinges when I go between rooms. And I mean, I'm playing the it's not like it's like it's an i7 6700, so it's not like a new processor, but it's new by the standards of this game. So anyway, let's see if there's anything cool on the way. I guess is it like an eagle? So this is the kind of stuff I really wanted to play the game for. There's just something about being able to go through these crowds and see everything. To me, it's really exciting. And again, I said this a little bit earlier. Okay, I guess I can't go up and out through there. I think one of the things that's so key to me in terms of enjoying titles like this is that there is something to be said, you know, whether you're telling some, you know, a fun little yarn about assassins or whether you're... Sacre! Let me get into a better position. Ha ha! Oops. Yeah, the combat in this is no joke. If you just start hammering your left mouse button like you do in normal ones, it's a really good way to get some damage. It also feels a little bit more kind of... The fights generally feel a little bit more like the sword fights that you'd see on a... so yeah, that was the original... I started off with like a really loaded opening, Jess, where I said I had a really personal question for you, and I wanted to say if we had to transpose this story into the modern day and... you know, based on what you know about me, would I be cast as a Templar or would I be cast as an assassin? So I unnecessarily started combat by sabotaging that bell, but there you have it. I'm mildly curious if they're going to get mad that I'm standing in here. Oh, Jess is very confident in this. Okay, I really just wanted to go here so that I could do the vision thing, but... Alright. I'm assuming that sign there, tyrants, is pretty easy to figure out. And Mort, probably death. No, I know that one, that is death. Yeah, well, one of the tricks with Never mind. I know Elkanu, sometimes his chat struggles with me saying this. Like, I always get reminded that it's a very old-fashioned phrase, like saying tarnation. But that's one of the reasons I continue to say it, because it's just such a... It's such a like stereotypical and not French thing to say. So. Oh yeah, no. Montreal definitely does not say Sacre Bleu. Every time I say it, people are like, you know, French people don't actually say that. I'm like, I know, but it's such a good line. I'm also really intrigued by the fact that you can do fights with people. Haha. Or sorry, I guess it should be ha ha ha. Yeah, I don't know. I just like playing. I like playing the idiot. So, I get scolded more than a few times, especially in French classes, whenever I say Sacre Bleu. But man, that guy's like flying in and out of existence. Let's see if we can get that to happen again. Oh. Okay, never mind. I don't want any part of that. This is a really good looking game, though. Like I said, I know Oranges is the one that it's modern, so it has to look good. But I think Unity definitely, I feel like Unity still holds up. The only complaint I might have would be the hair, but even then, like in the cinematics, it's spot on. By the way, chat, did you know from what Avia wrote that GG is French for good game? My pleasure is your pleasure. See, I always like saying, this is not the same thing, but I always like saying, I'm not happy till you're not happy. Okay. I learned that assassins cannot run up smooth surfaces. I will find a way to that eagle sight point, though, because I'm certainly not walking down. Okay, let's see if we can do something with this. Nope. Okay, so this one's not gonna work. There's some scaffolding. I'm pretty sure these are the narrators of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's like the fact there's a ramp here. Yeah, so this is one of the things that's a little weird, is that I don't see why I couldn't climb up those earlier ones. But obviously the game sort of set up these rules for me that it's like I have to take the complicated way around. The Hunchback of Notre Dame? So there is a voice actor. He's a really good one named Tony J. And he's the guy who plays Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'm not quite sure that was intended to have that visual effect, but oh god, this game is so beautiful. Look at that. He also plays the asylum owner in Beauty and the Beast. Basically, whenever you hear a really deep-voiced evil guy, he also did video games. That was Tony J. And a really weird bit of history for me is I learned piano at a company called, or it's like a studio or whatever called JS Music in Kelowna. Mrs. J was the receptionist there, and Mrs. J was the mother of Tony J, a very old, very sweet lady, and she found out I was interested in movies, and we got to talking, and I did not realize, I eventually learned, I think she talked about Tony at some point. I knew that her son was an actor, and then I realized it was Tony J, and I was like, oh my god, like, he's not just an actor, he's like a very memorable voice. That was a very interesting moment. I never know what happened. I cannot assume that she's with us anymore. I moved out of Kelowna fairly early on. But yeah, and it would be probably too generous to me to say that I play piano, Sin, because, well, hello. Because I'm out of practice and I don't have... Well, I now have an electronic keyboard. No. Tony J. The letter J, A-Y. New decrees from the National Assembly. Many a hateful law has been abolished, from the seigneurial courts, game rights, and the buying of magisterial positions to immunities from taxation and undeserved pensions. They vow more to come. Our brilliant citizen scientists, Laplace, Condorcet, Borda, and Lavoisier, will publish a serialized production to in defense of the proposed metric system, coming soon to the Journal de Paris. Le Bandois, dubious auctions, going. A private auction will be held at 12 de la Rue de Bussy on the 14th of Messiador, in dire need of sturdy woolen stones to repair your abode or baptismal fount to remember your old ways. Knock 4 times and ask for Flavian. No question as to the provenance will be answered. Madame Tussaud's peculiar skill. The extraordinary Marie Tussaud is able to fashion lifelike figures out of mere wax. You would swear her artworks were about to breathe, although many of her models have breathed their last. Have a good one, Ego. But yeah, so I sort of know, I know enough basics to be able to sort of relearn, and I'd really like to when I find the time. But I can't say I play the piano with any confidence or competence. Looks like a party. Give it a loot. All right. My recruiter. And I guess there's no loot in the interim, so we'll run and induct ourselves into the crazy cult. One of the things that I like about the crowds too is that, like, because sometimes the cities can be really empty in the Assassin's Creed games, so you kind of get to free run like a lunatic all over the place. And here you actually kind of need to acknowledge the fact that there's enough biomass to like keep you from getting where you want to go, which definitely just creates a level of credibility to the world that's sometimes missing. Man, it really loves hammering my computer whenever I come into this room. I'm gonna have to figure out a better way of dealing with this.
You are now a follower of Baphomet. Come to our ritual. The password is the Father of Understanding.
So like I could be outside and looking at a big crowd and there's no problem, but as soon as I go into that room, it's like, oh man, it's too much for the CPU to handle. I'm sorry about this, guys. I think what I'll do is it doesn't seem to be that big of a problem except when I go into that room. So what I'll do next time I do Assassin's Creed Unity, assuming you guys like it enough for me to do it again, I will make sure that I like do a good reset on my computer and just kind of close what's unnecessary, because it's either this version of OBS that doesn't like it, or there's something else going on that's causing it to be a little stuttery at certain points. Latude escapes again. Years ago, Jean-Henri Latude made quite a career of his exploits, escaping from the prison of Viciennes, then the Bastille, and then the Viciennes again. This time, however, he escaped from the crowd of well-wishers trying to shake his hand. The crowd pressed a bit closely for the escape artist, and he was compelled to rush away. Jacques back. Following the hullabaloo we all rightfully raised on his behalf, the king has eased off and reappointed Necker to oversee the country's finances. Hear, hear for King Louis. Are you talking about Assassin's Creed 3, or are you talking about the side-scrolling one? Alright. Seer of the Old City, the Ile de City has its own Sibyl. Mademoiselle Lemond is able to see seeing one's futures using her unique tarot cards. Designed by the woman herself, treat yourself to a peek at what is soon to be. The Garde Marquise de Lafayette has been confirmed as the Commander-in-Chief of the new National Guard. With him in charge, order will no doubt be swiftly restored. The troubles of the past weeks swept under the Damask silks. Republicanism, violence, surely Monsieur Desmoulins paints a rather bellicose picture. Can we not turn to reason and dialogue rather than to blows? With all the advances made in this age of enlightenment, brutality would seem rather out of place. It's Assassin's Creed 3. Yeah, we played that just before. So the way that I originally did these was, I think it was last year. I played Assassin's Creed 3 on. I played Assassin's Creed 3 on Independence Day, July the 4th, and because I knew Bastille Day was in 10 days. I rushed through it, and I wanted to make sure that I would play Assassin's Creed Unity on Bastille Day. And I did a little bit more of this game, but I had to reset the save file, and then I had some technical problems getting the game running, which obviously aren't all fixed yet. So we're back to square one on this one, but Assassin's Creed 3 was alright. The one problem that I had was that Connor is a very interesting character, but he is definitely upstaged by another character called Haytham. And that was one difficulty that I sort of had with the story. And it's not a particularly bad thing. I mean, it's nice to have multiple like multiple characters that you like, but yeah, that was I felt that the hero of the game was upstaged by another character, which was a little tricky for me. But it was good. Like, it was I think one of the big problems that comes up with the Assassin's Creed, with especially like Assassin's Creed games after Brotherhood and Revelations, is that it's actually really hard to make a game that sort of like, I really feel like the Assassin's Creed 2 games and the Ezio story, like, Ezio was a character that a lot of people really liked, and like it's clearly the right choice for them to make like multiple games with him in it. And at some point you kind of have to, at some point you need to like close it off. You need to say, okay, no more Ezio games. But it's hard because unless you find something that has that magic like those games had, in some ways it's gonna feel like a lesser title, and I think maybe Assassin's Creed 3 suffered a little bit from that. Is it worth it? That's a really good question. I think it depends, Avia, how much... Oh, you just finished Origin. Okay. So I know Johnny Big Time really likes AC3. How big of a fan of Assassin's Creed are you, Avia? Like, would you say you're a pretty big fan of the series? Or... Because I think Assassin's Creed 3 is going to be a step down from Origins. But I also think it's a big fan. Okay, then I think it's pretty safe to say that Assassin's Creed 3 is worth it. It was the first one to sort of introduce wilderness-style maps. It also has a really good boat sequence in it. But I will tell you, it's not my favorite. It's a good one, but not my favorite. It's probably the fairest review I can give of that. Like, I'll put it to you this way. I am happy I played it because it made me want to play more. It made me want to play more. Not quite what I want to do. It made me want to play more Assassin's Creed. So there's that. And obviously it has sort of it's an interesting bit of history. So it's interesting in that regard as well. Somebody doesn't like me. I'm actually not quite sure what these stairs things are. Les Catacombes. Left bank of Paris is built on rich limestone deposits, the stone from which are built much of the city. Initially, the stone was mined well out of the city proper, but as Paris expanded, it gradually covered even the mined out areas. Since medieval mining involved digging a well down to stone deposits and then tunneling horizontally until the vein was depleted, the result was a vast, intricate maze of tunnels beneath the streets. A series of building companies beginning in 1774 proved that the tunnels could no longer be ignored, and in 1782, Police Lieutenant Thibaut de Crozes decided to act, by which they mean he decided to do something about the situation, not that he decided to put on a small play. Thibaut had quarries within an area of 240 hectares surveyed and registered. He saw the old mine shafts as an opportunity to solve another pressing problem: what to do with the bones of the hundreds of thousands of dead people from the innocent cemetery, which were so densely packed that they literally spilled out into the basements of adjoining buildings. Sleep well tonight. Thanks to Thibaut, 6 million deceased were crammed into the quarries, sometimes 30 meters thick. Along with the mortal remains are those of Thibaut himself, along with the 1,800 victims of the September massacres in 1792. Later, architects transformed the caverns into a proper mausoleum, complete with the following epigraph by poet Jacques Delisle. "Stop, here lies the empire of death." Bones and skulls were arranged in intricate patterns, and special chambers were set up, museum-like, to display samples of the various types of stone found beneath Paris and the innumerable skeletal deformities to be found among the catacombs' inhabitants. These unusual aesthetics have made the catacombs a popular tourist destination since the early 1800s. Yeah, for sickos. The other thing I should mention too, Avia...
A new initiate. We're using the chalices you stole in tonight's ritual. Enter.
Oh, wow. The game usually goes on sale quite a bit, so...
What's so funny, Jesse Quill?
Welcome to the cult of Baphomet.
Sisters and brothers of Baphomet, we here dedicate the life of our beloved sister Jeanne to the glory and power of the wisdom of Baphomet.
We stand together in gratitude to you, Jeanne, for your bravery.
I yield this, my body, for the good of my sisters and brothers in Baphomet.
We honor your sacrifice.
You guys are freaks. Well, you can see the catacombs now, Jess. Are you impressed? Are you not entertained? Well, you can sort of see it. Apparently, whenever I go inside, the game...
Lots of attractive women this year, eh?
How can you tell with these ridiculous masks?
Last year they botched the ritual sacrifice.
I took care to sharpen the knife this time round.
I really do want to explore this more, but I think I'm going to save it. I do want to get a little bit more story progress in before the end of the night, so... Oh my god, did you guys see what they're doing down there? Using the old noggins. Retrieve famous severed heads for Madame Tussaud.
I am Madame Tussaud. I'm adept at making wax figures and death masks. I promised the Assembly I would make masks of famous victims of the guillotine. It's grisly, but it was the only way to get out of prison. And now someone has stolen the heads I was given. Could you please find them for me?
Madame Tussaud, born Marie Grossholz in Strasbourg, Marie Tussaud would go on to be famous for her Museum of Wax Sculptures in London. Thank God she changed her name. I doubt they'd be queuing round the block for Madame Grossholz's house of vaguely recognizable figurines. She learned how to sculpt from Dr. Philippe Curtius, for whom she worked as a housekeeper. Philippe was a physician, physicist, and anatomist who sculpted heads and organs for use in his classes. I hope they mean anatomy classes, because if he brought them in during a random math class, I think the authorities should have been told. Marie became his brightest and only pupil and came with him to Paris. In 1776, their exhibition of portraits attracted large crowds of people. Astonished by the realism of their figures, it was almost as if the skin of the sculptures quivered. Marie created her first wax figure of Voltaire and Rousseau, the best of enemies, in 1778. She went on to Benjamin Franklin. She was also employed by Louis XVI to teach drawing and modeling to Louis's sister, and moved into Versailles. However, such proximity to royalty served her poorly after the fall of the monarchy. She was arrested for royalist sympathies and waited to meet her death in the same cell as Eugène de Beauharnais. Just as her executioner was cutting her hair to clear her neck, the order came for her release. The condition of her freedom was to create wax sculptures of famous heads, whether hated or celebrated. Eventually, these would include Marie Antoinette, Marat, and Robespierre. Her mentor, Curtius, died in the autumn of 1794, just as the terror was subsiding. He left Marie his collection of heads. How touching. She left for London in 1802 to present her collection, which had been the talk of the town for the past 2 decades. She would remain there for the rest of her life, establishing her famous exhibition. She died in her sleep at the age of 88, 54 of which she spent sculpting. Having completed her own self-portrait many years since, she has remained eternally young. If by eternally young, you mean it permanently dead.
A friend found out something you might find important. She sent me this letter.
Chère Madame, I have learned of a certain politician flushed with pride in his role in overthrowing the Girondins and has procured the head of Jean-Pierre Brissot, recently stolen from you. He works near the Consigliere, your devoted friend.
it that a soldier who guards Sainte-Chapelle wanted the head of Olympe de Gouges? He was in love with her from afar.
Freaky.
The judge of the Palais de Justice who condemned Jacques Hébert apparently wanted Hébert's head as a trophy.
Let me out, 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 let me out.
There we go. Sure, that works. Wee! 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 I'm pretty sure I can't just climb the. I'm pretty sure I can't just climb the gate like that. Palais de Justice, the ancient and ornate building that overlooks the Tour de l'Orange with its elaborate clock featuring figures of justice and law, was initially built in 1296 by Philip IV of France, in spite of his financial worries. It was here that he consolidated the dispensation of justice, although the judges soon came to be infamous for their corruption. During the Revolution, the Palais housed the much-feared Revolutionary Tribunal. In terms of Assassin's Creed 3, I don't think so. Connor is a more serious character, although that's not necessarily a fault of his. In this game, I would say Arno is not as... definitely not as charismatic as Ezio. I'm finding it a little bit harder to relate to Arno at the moment, to be completely honest. But the game is still young, so I'm not gonna... Oh god, I'm actually gonna have to... Okay, well, you know what? We can... We'll have a good old roll in the hay. Why not?
Oh.
They will never catch me here. It is just the beginning, yes. And I mean, I think everybody's going to relate to characters in... Ah, crap. I also think people will definitely relate to other characters. So one really important thing here about Connor, and I think is a really important feature about him, is that my friends who do have native heritage actually quite like Connor, and they like that aspect of their ancestry is portrayed in a video game. And that's obviously not a feeling that I can get myself, because so far as I can tell, I have a lot of English in my background, and that's about it. So as a result, it's one of these things where I need to appreciate that people will relate to different characters for different reasons, and it's a good thing that there's that diversity. All right. Let's see if I can make something of this. When there's a conflict nearby? But there isn't a conflict nearby. Yes. I originally wanted to be very clever in my ability to sneak through, but that didn't happen. Oh, am I gonna have to go inside? I'm probably gonna have to go inside. Well, maybe not. All right. Oh, that's right. Okay, well, first things first. Whee! Ah! Ha ha! There was a side-scrolling one based in China, but you are right, Syme. They have not really covered China well. I think what's so interesting about China for an Assassin's Creed game is that I'd be really interested to see how they do the Templar assassin conflict in that region, because I know a lot of history and a lot of significance has been on order and sort of the the control. I have a friend who taught in China and very much came away. I don't agree with him on this, but I mean, he, in fairness, like, he was in the country that is kind of the old saying that China is not governed, it's ruled. And so, in that sense, that's obviously a much more Templarish kind of thing to say, rather than rather than revolutionary. And so it raises the question. I mean, obviously the times when you have the assassins dominate, they're not necessarily, those ideals are not necessarily ones that led to outcomes that people say, oh, what a wonderful, what a wonderful time. Oh, that's a really good point, actually. So you can go back to some of the, like, the really old history. That would be a neat way to take it, actually. I think you could also think of some of the industrialization of Japan would be a really interesting period, because in this case, obviously, you have, I mean, I think even the Total War game kind of deals with sort of the tension between tradition and sort of the new ways, and I think that could potentially lead to, some interesting interesting moments. Edo period? So you guys know a lot more about this history than I do, so I'm gonna defer to you on what works best. Ha ha! Captain Lenotte, I have purchased both heads from our friend. They are kept in chests in the concierge. I have a single key that opens them both. Right, where's that? That's a new mission. I might as well take this while I'm here. I wish I knew what some of these symbols meant. They're not as clear. Like, I can get what a newspaper means, but some of these other ones are a little... initiates artifact, or artifacts. Okay. So... it's less clear to me where I'm... Okay, well... first things first, let's make the most of this. Sainte-Chapelle. Sainte-Chapelle, or Holy Chapel, was built by Louis IX, later canonized as Saint Louis, to house Christ's crown of thorns, which he had just purchased from Baldwin II of Constantinople. Louis purchased the crown of thorns, that means. Christ didn't travel into the future to buy a crown of thorns from Baldwin II of Constantinople. He already had access to thorns in biblical times, and he didn't need to go all the way to Constantinople to find some bloke called Baldwin II. Also, Baldwin II, so Baldwin I suffered through life with that god-awful name and then decided to give it to his son as well? Some people. The edifice is a unique example of seemingly invisible stone stonework, since its windows take up all the space between the structural supports. Perhaps more extraordinary is that it was built in just 2 years, between 1246 and 1248. Believe me, I'm very familiar with European builders. Nothing else in their history has ever been built in just 2 years, not even a small wall or miniature water feature. It is set on 2 levels. The lower level was for Parisians and the people of the court. The upper level was for the king and his family. On important occasions, the king presented the crown, taken from the reliquary where he alone had the key, to the kneeling congregation. It came close to being demolished during the Revolution, but would eventually be used as a flower store, a club room for the Section de la Cité, and finally a store for archiving old papers, which effectively saved it since it served the people. It bore a sign proclaiming national property for sale until 1837. All the sacred vessels and precious books had long since disappeared. Edo and Meiji Golden Era of Japan are really neat and splendid ties fueled by invasion, occupation, and exploitation of Korea. Yeah, and this is one of the things that's so interesting. Like, this is one of the things that really makes Assassin's Creed such a good idea for a game series. It feels just absolutely limitless in terms of the ideas. Jesse Quill has had to endure two extended rants on my part of how I would do certain time periods and how I would put my special mark on the series. But yeah, like, I mean, history is just really cool on its own. So, you know, to be able to build a game series around history basically provides you with an unlimited supply of material to, you know, to continue making new games off of. Out of curiosity, Jess, what was your favorite out of them? How do I get down? Not only do you have to pick, you need to give me an order and a summary of each of the ones you liked. I'm kidding. You don't have to pick. But of course, if you do answer the question, it gives a tiny little glimpse to the rest of see, the rest of the cast gets to see a little glimpse on something that you know, and then you get to lord it over them that you have private information. The palace was the seat of the kings of France from the 10th century to the middle of the 14th, when Charles V abandoned it for the Louvre. By the early 15th century, it was primarily used as a prison, though the name concierge, from concierge, keeper of the royal palace, stuck. By the time of the Revolution, the conciergerie was the main prison in Paris. For many, it was the last stop before execution, which earned it the nickname the antechamber of the guillotine. The was also called the most lucrative furnished lodging in Paris. Prisoners were allowed to rent a bed for 27 livres a month, but since many were executed after only a few days, jailers could rent out the same bed sometimes 10 times a month. Yeah, I really love the look of this game. It's just something else. All right, where was that? You don't need to prove your superiority. All right, chat. Challenge has been issued. If you guys, sorry, by the way, I know there hasn't been as much gameplay as there should be. I'm probably disappointing. It just occurred to me, especially when Outworld was here, I really should be a little bit better at keeping things going along, but I don't know. It's nice to catch up, especially with this game. So part of this has just been me learning it all over again. I hope you guys have gotten something out of it. Yeah, and actually there's a wonderful scene in Casablanca. Among other items, the list includes the chest belonging to Monsieur Le Maître, Deputy of Paris, chest belonging to Captain Lenotre. I'm glad to hear that, Jess. So apparently I didn't need to kick your ass. I'm sorry about that, sir. I am very happy to hear that, Sime. Yeah, this is one of the things. I don't like sounding so needy about this stuff. But I do actually care that people are having a good time, and obviously nobody is forced to watch this, so, you know, they can walk out on their own. But I don't like to assume that I don't like to assume that I have you guys no matter what. So I do probably check in maybe a little bit more than I should, but well then. Whee! But yeah, I don't know. I try to strike the balance of like doing my thing while still being conscious of people's preferences. All right, let's see how far down we can go.
Madame! Madame! Madame!
Yeah, never mind.
Damn pillock! You can't just bloody do what you please on my back!
What did you call me?
Vive la révolution!
All right, well, so much for that. I feel like I should apologize.
You have them. I can make the death masks and be safe. Oh, what a world in which we live.
All right, guys. I did want to do another story mission, but I am at my time limit, and it's getting close to midnight. One of the reasons why I'm going to wrap it up here is if you guys didn't see it on Twitter, I know I wasn't able to cast for you on Wednesday. That's because I went to the local video game collective, Dirty Rectangles, which is a fun place, and if you guys ever are in Ottawa at that time, I do recommend that you stop by because there are some actually really good people there. I got a chance to take a look at a couple games. I hope they don't mind that I mentioned them, but Sean LeBlanc did his L'Automne d'Air entry, which was... So the theme this year was incompatible genres. So he did Match 3, Connect 4. and there was a gentleman, I don't actually know his name, I just know I follow him on Twitter. He's doing a game called Hexagon Falls, which is a neat little puzzler, and he let me play a little bit of that, which was a good time to... It was fun. So it's really encouraging. There were some new faces there, which hopefully they had a good time as well. And I don't know, it's nice to see people, you know, it's one thing to have sort of faceless... So this is the thing, right? As cool as Assassin's Creed is, you know, there's an army of people behind it, and I don't know what it was like to make all of these things. And obviously people really liked complaining about all the bugs in the game, and I mean, I'm sure the team didn't feel great about the bugs that were in there. So it's a very different experience to be confronted like one-on-one with the people, and to see things sort of in a state of, you know, in progress. It's a very different way of looking at games. That's one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed Cultist Simulator so much. But with that in mind, I did commit that every Wednesday would be a Cultist Simulator night, and I clearly didn't play that tonight, so I am going to do my best to cast tomorrow afternoon, and that will be a few hours of Cultist Simulator to make up for Wednesday's deficit. So if you are around during that time, I'd love to have you. We'll be picking up the game that I was doing last week, so hopefully we'll make a little bit more progress. There's also been a bit of simplification for the rituals as well. So yeah, I hope you guys come along, because Cultist Simulator is a very good game. If it doesn't work for your time zone, I can understand completely, but I did want to just mention that it's not that I'm trying to get a little bit of a break in, but I am making sure that I can get up at a decent enough hour tomorrow to get all the things that I need to have done, while simultaneously having enough time to be able to get a cast in the afternoon. And I will announce that on Twitter when I plan on actually doing it. But I hope you guys enjoyed Assassin's Creed Unity. I would love to do more, and I think what I'll start doing for future casts of Unity, I'll make sure that I push the story forward. I'll do some side quests or something like that, but I think what I might do to make sure that I still know the controls, I might do some of the side quests for myself, and I will I'll make sure that I save like the main story for casts. So if I do little things like, you know, just pick up I'll probably do like collectibles and things like that. So I'll pick up the, you know, the chests and such, and we'll be able to move forward. Need a call? Not on Saturday. Anyways, guys, let's find somebody. You guys were remarkably generous with your hosts. Let me take a quick minute, because there are people who host me manually, but I do want to acknowledge the other people who were here as well. We've got Inferno Fowler, Jesse Quill, Amber Ray, Maka Angzir, Mingo Duck, Malicide, Nubasaur, Starbright Knight, Custom Games, Cyberdog K, Flowfi, and the Unknown Brigade, and of course the people who hosted me earlier. Thank you so much for that support. It's always nice to have people hosting. There's always a chance that somebody new will see the stream, and that always works for me. And Kilgore Trout is back to Star Trek 25th anniversary, so I feel very safe rating him. I'd love it if you guys would come along. The line, as always, is "We're tired of system talk, heard this place was better." Kilgore is a really talented caster. I think a lot of the stuff that I said about Outworld counts for Kilgore Trout as well. Very hardworking caster, very great personality. It's been incredibly rewarding to see him grow his audience and find success on this platform. And it's very easy to see why. He's just a genuine guy. And again, I know Jess also really likes Star Trek, so that lets me kill two birds with one stone. But I'm done for tonight. Thank you very much for sharing the game with me. It is good, by the way. If you guys do like Assassin's Creed stuff, do let me know. I'll be sure to prioritize it up the queue. But we're going to be doing Cultist Simulator on Saturday, and we'll see what happens on Monday. So have a good night. See you all at Kilgore's.